to our urgent question.
Thank you for granting this urgent question, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for the Home Department if she will make a statement on the alleged incitement to murder members of Parliament by the Irish Republican group Kneecap.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the right honourable gentleman for his urgent question? Let us never forget that we lost two members of this House, Joe Cox and Sir David Amess, in tragic circumstances. Both Joe and Sir David were passionate advocates for their constituents who cared deeply about a range of issues and embodied the finest democratic qualities, traditions and values of this House. I know the thoughts of the whole House will be with their families today and every day. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to reiterate the Home Secretary's words and fully condemn the comments that have been made. Remarks like these are dangerous and irresponsible, and this government utterly rejects the views expressed by this group. Let me be crystal clear. Political intimidation and abuse have no place in our society. Now, I know the House will want immediate answers on this issue, but as the policing minister said yesterday in relation to the urgent question on the Headingley case, the desire for immediate answers is often constrained by the obligation that we have as ministers and as members of this House not to do or say anything that will interfere with what is a live police investigation. As members know, the investigation and prosecution of criminal offences are a matter for the police and the Crown Prosecution Service to determine, and they are operationally independent of government. It is important that the police are allowed to carry out their ongoing investigations free from political interference. However, for the benefit of the House, let me recap what the Metropolitan Police have themselves said about these reports. We have been made aware of the video and it has been referred to the Counter-Terrorism Internet Referral Unit for assessment and to determine whether any further police investigation may be required. Whilst I will not comment further on this specific case, the safety and security of members of this House and all those who serve in elected office is an issue to which I attach the utmost seriousness, as does the Home Secretary and as does Mr. Speaker. Elected representatives at all levels and across all parties must be able to perform their duties safely and without fear. And through the Defending Democracy Task Force, we are driving a whole-of-government effort to ensure that that is the case. The Task Force has recently agreed a programme of work to tackle the harassment and intimidation of elected members, and the Task Force is also supporting the Speakers' Conference, which is addressing these issues. Those of us who attend this place are all too aware of the devastating consequences of violence against our colleagues and friends. We may not always agree, but if there is one universal truth we would all subscribe to, it is surely that our politics is better when it is conducted respectfully and safely, and I hope and trust that that will have the support of members right across this House. Mr. Speaker, the Home Secretary and I condemn the comments that have been made, and we will work tirelessly to ensure the safety and security of all those who step forward to serve in public office.
Mark Francois.
Mr. Speaker, two MPs, Joe Cox and Sir David Amess, have been murdered within the last decade in the line of duty meeting their constituents. Frankly, sir, that could have been any of us. So I should like to ask the Home Secretary, albeit in absentia today, four very specific questions. One, how long is this counter-terrorist police inquiry likely to take? The video plainly speaks for itself. How could the words, "kill your local MP," possibly have been taken out of context? Two, We now know Kneecap applied for a £14,000 government grant during the previous Parliament, which was vetoed, quite rightly, by the Right Honourable Member for North West Essex. Kneecap then appealed against this decision as discriminatory. The incoming Labour government concluded fighting the appeal would be not in the public interest. Can I ask the Home Secretary to tell the House which government minister approved that absurd decision to effectively surrender to Kneecap over this, and why? Third, Kneecap are still booked to appear at Glastonbury, the organisers of which incidentally received £1.5 million of taxpayers' subsidy over COVID. So does the Home Secretary agree it would be unconscionable for Kneecap to appear, at least whilst the police inquiry is underway? Kneecap should surely be barred today. To be crystal clear, does the government agree with that or not? Yes or no? Finally, Kneecap have now offered a crocodile tears apology to Katie Amos. Haven't that family been through enough already? So as it's within the Home Secretary's gift, will she now seriously reconsider their request to examine potential failures by Prevent, which may have contributed to David's death, via the auspices of the Southport inquiry? Absolutely. Isn't that the least we could do? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm genuinely grateful to the Right Honourable Gentleman for him bringing forward this matter, because I think it provides an opportunity to discuss these issues. It's something that I've been keen to do for some time. Let me firstly just gently say to him, he mentioned the name of the band on a number of occasions. I deliberately did not name them and will not name them. And it's for Right Honourable and Honourable Members to choose what language they would use. But my advice is not to give them any further publicity by naming them. I won't be doing so, and I suggest that other members don't either. Now, the Right Honourable Member spoke about the Home Secretary. Let me tell him what the Home Secretary said about this, because she said that this is a total disgrace. It's dangerous and irresponsible to say these sorts of things, and I hope that everybody involved, not just the band, but also those involved surrounding them and those involved in events, also take some responsibility on this and look very seriously at the consequences of these kind of remarks, not just what's been said. Let me just say to the Right Honourable Gentleman that I chair the Defending Democracy Task Force. The Home Secretary is the Home Secretary, and clearly she has overall responsibility, but the judgment is that I would be here as the person who chairs the task force. We both, of course, take it incredibly seriously. Now, the Right Honourable Gentleman asked about the length of the investigation. I know that he will understand that is not a matter for ministers, that is a matter for the Metropolitan Police. He also asked about the funding of the group. Now, let me just say to him again, gently and respectfully, that I don't agree with the characterisation of the case that he made with regard to the funding of the group. The truth of the matter is, and I did not raise this proactively, I'm only referencing it in response to his specific question about it. This is a situation that we inherited from the previous government. It's a scheme that we inherited, but it's also a situation that we inherited, because after approving the grant, they then U-turned on it being given, didn't take proper legal advice, ended up in a costly legal battle, which the then government lost. And obviously this government has a duty to bring that to an end and protect taxpayers' money. But we are deeply concerned about all of these things that have made up this case, and that is precisely why, and the Secretary of State for the Department of Culture, Media and Sport made this point yesterday, that we are now rightly taking the opportunity to review the scheme. The Right Honourable Gentleman asked me about Glastonbury. Now, it's for the organisers of the festival to decide who appears. If the Honourable Gentleman will just be patient and listen to the entirety of my response, it is not for government ministers to say who's going to appear at Glastonbury. It's for the organisers of the festival. But there is, as I have said, an ongoing live police investigation. So the government would urge the organisers of the Glastonbury Festival to think very carefully about who is invited to perform there later this year. The Right Honourable Member, for reasons that I completely understand and I appreciate very much, mentioned the Amos family. And our thoughts and prayers continue to be with the Amos family as they are with the family of Joe Cox. Now, as the House will be aware, because I've spoken about this previously, we have published the Prevent Learning Review to ensure that there is public scrutiny and transparency over the perpetrators' dealings with Prevent. We will also publish the finding from Lord Anderson's review. But the Home Secretary and I do want to make sure that every avenue has been explored, and that is why we will appoint a senior figure to scrutinise all of the previous reviews that have taken place to see if there are any questions that still need to be answered or issues that still need to be addressed. And we will act as necessary if any such gaps are identified as a result of that process.
David Burton-Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his statement today. And nobody but those in my constituency, and I'm sure in my honourable friend from Spen Valley's constituency, knows what it's actually like when somebody kills your MP. And the reverberations of that are still being felt in Southend at Western Leigh 3.5 years later for the constituents, never mind the family of Sir David Amos, who will never recover from this. Does my honourable friend agree with me that those in the public eye, anyone in fact, but especially those in the public eye, should be careful with the words, because words have power and words can be incredibly dangerous, and we should, with all force, absolutely condemn the type of incitement that we have seen from this particular group. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very grateful to him for the remarks that he has made, not just today, but previously as well. I totally agree with the points that he's making. He's absolutely right that words do have consequences. And all of us, both inside and outside of this House, should treat others with respect and with dignity. And I completely join with him in condemning the words that have been used. And I give him and the House a categorical assurance that we will do everything that we possibly can to ensure the safety and security of all of those who serve in elected office.
Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Our thoughts today are with our dear friends Sir David Amos and, of course, Joe Cox. They were brutally murdered doing their job on behalf of their constituents on a surgery Friday. And tragically, they weren't the first MPs to be murdered. The crest of Erin Eve, of course, is up there above the door, alongside those of Sir David and Joe behind me. Those who incite the murder of MPs are attacking democracy itself. So, will the Minister join me in condemning unreservedly the despicable evil which Kneecap represents in the appalling comments they made? Secondly, I would like to ask about the funding question. It was in November of last year, November 2024, that the Department of Business and Trade decided to end its support for the legal challenge, a decision which resulted in the band winning and becoming entitled to the money. Why did the government make that decision? In light of what we now know, will they appeal against that decision? And will the Minister, critically, make a categoric assurance from the dispatch box that this band will never, under any circumstances, receive public money again from any source, including the National Lottery and including Northern Ireland Screen? Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, this organisation has also expressed support for Hamas and Hezbollah, proscribed terrorist groups. Now, the Minister said he didn't want to comment on the police investigation at all, but of course the government did comment quite extensively on the investigations going on after Southport. So I would like him just to make clear, as the government did last summer, that they consider it in the public interest that the police do investigate and, if there is evidence, prosecute these offences or potential offences. Because if he's not willing to do that now, as the government did last summer, he does risk the perception of two-tier justice. Finally, I would like to say I met recently, very recently, with Sir David's widow, Julia, and his daughter, Katie, who bear, as the Minister can imagine, an enormous burden of grief. They want to make sure the lessons are learned from Sir David's murder. The perpetrator, as the Minister knows, had been in the Prevent programme previously, like the perpetrator in Reading and like the perpetrator in Southport. Julie and Katie Amos would like Sir David's murderer and the failings of Prevent to be looked at alongside the Southport case, which is being investigated, and indeed the Reading case as well. So please, will the Minister honour his memory by agreeing to that today?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to the Shadow Home Secretary for the remarks that he has made. He's right that when a threat is made to a member of this House or anyone who serves in elected office, it isn't just an attack on that particular individual, it is an attack on our democracy. That is precisely why this government, as did the last one, has placed so much emphasis and importance on the work of the Defending Democracy Task Force. He will know from his time in government that this is the fulcrum point that draws together all of the different bits of government and ensures that our response to the threats that we face is properly organised, that the resources are marshalled correctly and appropriately, and we make sure that we enable all of those who wish to serve in public life are able to do so without the fear of the kind of completely unacceptable attacks that we've seen in recent years. So I agree with him, and I hope that that is a matter on which that we can all be agreed. And I also agree with the points that he made about the remarks themselves. I'm not going to name the band, but I do reiterate what I've said previously, that the government unreservedly condemns the remarks that have been made. Now, he asked me specifically about funding. I gave in my earlier response, I think, a pretty detailed reply in terms of the sequencing of the funding that was agreed under the previous government. But he did ask me about future funding. So let me be clear with him and with the House. We don't think individuals expressing the views that we've heard should be receiving taxpayer funding. I think that is a non-controversial thing to say. And as the Secretary of State for DCMS said yesterday, officials are reviewing the music export growth scheme in light of the comments that have emerged. I'd also add, and he may or may not agree with this, I think that he probably will, that it does seem strange to me, and I'm sure to other members of this House, that a Republican group, seemingly opposed to the British government in the first place, would want to receive funding from it. I find that baffling, I have to say. Now, he mentioned prescription and Hamas and Hezbollah. Now, he will know very well that Hamas and Hezbollah are proscribed organisations. Once an organisation is proscribed, it is a criminal offence to belong to, invite support for, recklessly express support for, or arrange a meeting in support of a proscribed organisation. It is also an offence to wear clothing or carry articles in public or publish an image of clothing or any article in a way which arouses reasonable suspicion that an individual is a member or a supporter of a proscribed organisation. So the government is, again, crystal clear. Support for proscribed organisations is wholly unacceptable. And where an offence has been committed, the government trusts that the police will use the full extent of the offences available to them. Now, his final point was about Lady Amos and Katie Amos. I hope that from the response that I gave to the Right Honourable Member earlier on, he will take some comfort about the seriousness with which we address these issues. I'm acutely conscious that we have with us in the chamber a member of Joe Cox's family, and it is absolutely right that we conduct ourselves in a way, which we are, that remembers the loss that the families have suffered and that this house has suffered. And this government will do everything that we possibly can to make sure that those families are supported and these terrible events never occur again.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I will first say it's disappointing the way in which the benches opposite have approached this question today. This is, I would have hoped, an issue on which the whole House can remain united. Nonetheless, the way in which the matter has been approached is to be regretted. To come to my question, I have no desire to overly pour cold water on the daft political posturings of adolescents being given voice in pop music. It's something that's been going on for decades, and it's somewhat of a rite of passage. But the comments of this band go far beyond what is remotely acceptable in a civilised country. So can I ask the Minister, would he please use his good offices to look to minimise the number of platforms, not just Glastonbury, but the number of mainstream platforms across the board on which this band are being platformed?
Minister.
I'm grateful to him for his question. He's absolutely right about the comments that have been made. We unreservedly condemn them. I think he makes a point which I do want to raise with the House about the importance of the way in which we work cooperatively, collaboratively across this House. I chair the Defending Democracy Task Force. I chair it on behalf of the government, but I also chair it on behalf of all of the members of this House and the other House, and on behalf of those who serve in local government as well. My approach has always been and will always be to work cooperatively with every political party, and I am very happy at any point to meet with any member or any political party to discuss these matters. My door is always open. In terms of the point he made about the profile of the band, I know that he will have heard the words that I spoke with regard to Glastonbury. It's specifically why I'm not naming them, because I do not want to give them any further publicity, but I agree with the sentiment at the point that he made with regard to that.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Lisa Smart.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The remarks by members of the band are completely unacceptable, and it is right that they have apologised to the families of Sir David Amos and of Joe Cox. But clearly these comments should never have been made in the first place. Incitement to violence against members of Parliament cuts to the very heart of our democracy. The reality is, Madam Deputy Speaker, 2 MPs have been murdered in the last decade. It is absolutely right that the authorities are looking into other comments relating to encouraging support for proscribed terror organisations. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to look at what more the government can do. What criteria does the Home Office apply when assessing whether artists or performers are promoting harmful or extremist rhetoric, particularly where there is a clear attempt to provoke public outrage? And what assessment has the Minister made of the impact that comments like these may have on community cohesion?
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to her, as I always am, for the very sensible and reasonable way in which she's framed her remarks. She's absolutely right. Incitement to violence is utterly unacceptable in any context. But in the context of members of this House and other elected politicians, it is completely unacceptable. And that is why the Prime Minister has recently refreshed the mandate of the Defending Democracy Task Force. That is why, as the chair of that task force, I'm working very closely with law enforcement and with all government departments and the Electoral Commission and a range of different organisations, including the police, to ensure that right around the country we have the most coherent and joined up and properly resourced response. Thinking back to the general election last year, all of us, I'm sure, will have seen things that we consider to have been completely unacceptable. It is the ambition of myself and the government as the chair that electoral events in the future, and currently I'm very conscious that we are working through one at the moment, are fought in a way that, yes, enables and encourages reasonable and robust debate. It's absolutely right that in the cut and thrust of politics there should be the rough and tumble of debate. But I think instinctively we all know where the line is drawn. And this particular incident went miles over where the line should be drawn. So we will continue to look very carefully at the circumstances of this particular case. As I have said, ultimately it is for the police to make an operational decision about where they want to go with it. But I can give her an assurance that through the DDTF we take these matters incredibly seriously, and I'd be very happy to work even more closely with her and her colleagues and with all members of this House in that endeavour.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I take this moment to thank the Speaker's Office for the support they give new MPs to ensure that we all feel safe. And I thank the Minister for his response to this UQ and his equal commitment to ensure that members of this House feel safe and secure in their work. However, would the Minister agree with me that when we think about the security of MPs, we must also consider the safety of MPs' staff? I think about the staff who work in my constituency of Hurley, who do their jobs solely because they want to help people in my constituency and should never feel intimidated or unsafe.
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to him. I think he makes some really important points, and I would like to join with him in thanking Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speakers and all of the Speaker's Office for the work that they do with the Parliamentary Security Department in ensuring that all members of this House are safe and secure. And the Speaker's Conference into these matters is a very important process that the government is supporting. I gave evidence to Mr. Speaker, along with the Elections Minister from MHCLG a couple of weeks ago. It is a process that we consider to be hugely valuable, and we look forward to Mr. Speaker's conclusions, and we'll want to work closely with him in terms of implementing the findings. He's absolutely right, though, to reference MP staff. All of us will know that often where the rubber hits the road in our constituencies is the extraordinary dedicated work that is being done by our office managers, our parliamentary assistants, our parliamentary caseworkers who do amazing work on our behalf. They are absolutely in my thoughts when I think about these matters. The Bridger network around the country is there for them as well as it is for members of this House. And I think it's also worth adding that in addition to members and their staff, we also need to make sure that our family members are also properly protected. And I have been in touch with the police recently, specifically in regard to incidents that have occurred on a couple of occasions now at members' home addresses. That is totally unacceptable, and I have written to the police constructively to remind them of the powers they have in this regard.
Sir Jeremy Wright.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I know the Minister will agree with me that part of the service that my honourable friend for Rayleigh and Wickford has done for the House today is to give us all the opportunity to make a point that really shouldn't need making, namely that incitement to violence against members of Parliament is no more acceptable than incitement to violence against any other member of our society. But would he agree with me that although he's entirely right to be cautious about prejudicing a specific investigation into whether the criminal law has been broken in this instance, what we can and should say today is that artistic licence is not a defence to a breach of the criminal law?
Minister.
I agree with the right honourable gentleman on both counts.
Luke Akehurst.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think the concern here is not just about the glorification of violence against MPs and the impact that has on the families of MPs who have been murdered in terrorist incidents, whether that's Joe Cox or Sir David Amess, but also the same band has expressed support for Hamas and Hezbollah, which are proscribed groups, and that has an impact on the feeling of safety and security of the Jewish community. The rhetoric they're using represents a return to very ugly rhetoric about communal differences in Northern Ireland, which I know will cause fear and pain to honourable members from Northern Ireland who lost friends and colleagues from terrorism. But my main concern is of the impact on democracy as a whole. Calls for violence against politicians of any party actually have a chilling effect on the willingness of any normal citizen to think, I could run for council, I could run for an MP, because they're thinking they put themselves and their families at threat of violence. And will the Minister agree with me that it's absolutely vital for the future of democracy in this country that people feel that they can engage in public life without putting their lives and safety in danger?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think the Honourable Member made two really important points. I completely agree with his remarks that he made at the beginning of his question. And he's absolutely right to raise concerns about the chilling effect that this could well be having on our democracy. I'm sure that all of us in this place will know exceptional people who, for reasons that we will all understand, have decided not to step forward to serve in public life. And this House, local councils, police and crime commissioners are not getting people who would otherwise be in a position to make a very significant contribution to public life. And that is a tragedy for our country, that some people might feel that they shouldn't be stepping forward because of the risks, the pressures, the harassment and the intimidation that goes with service in public life. That is precisely why we take the Defending Democracy Task Force so seriously. That is precisely why we are working with colleagues across government. It's why we're working with colleagues both in local government and in the devolved assemblies to ensure that people don't feel like politics is somewhere that is too dangerous for them to be. That would be a terrible state for our country if we got to that place. And I am absolutely determined, as the Home Secretary is, to make sure that the Defending Democracy Task Force is as successful as it possibly can be in ensuring that nobody feels like that they don't want to step forward because of the risks of doing so.
Gavin Robinson.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the honourable gentleman for making the reference that he did, because whilst it is natural that we refer to Joe Cox and to Sir David Amess, I think it is important for members of this House to recognise that there are 4 plaques in this chamber to Ian Gow, Erin Eve, Robert Bradford and Sir Anthony Berry, all of whom were murdered by the Irish Republican antecedents to Kneecap. And whilst we have heard over the last 24 hours crocodile tears, confected apologies, whataboutery, nothing can be said that will mask the naked hatred that exists within those individuals for whom their balaclava has slipped. But can I say to the Minister, and I've heard him on his Defending Democracy Task Force and his aspiration that there is a coherency across this United Kingdom on the glorification of terrorism, can I say to him that for far too long an eye has been turned against the glorification of terrorism in Northern Ireland. Confined to Northern Ireland, apparently it seems to be quite acceptable. And yet it keeps the wounds of our past open. It frustrates reconciliation. To my mind, there is not coherency on the application of laws that should be preventing the glorification of terrorism in Northern Ireland. And in that vein, can I ask the Minister to meet with my colleagues and I to ensure that it is the case?
Minister.
Well, I'm very grateful to him, and he's absolutely right to draw reference to all of the plaques in this chamber, and we think about all of those who've lost their lives serving our country. He may be aware that I was in Northern Ireland recently, where I met with the Justice Minister to discuss this and other matters. He may be aware that I had previously written to the leaders of all the Northern Ireland political parties offering a meeting. I sent that letter in the autumn of last year. He's saying that he didn't receive the letter. So let me say to him, of course, I'd be very happy to meet with him and keen to do that as quickly as possible. Thank you.
David Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yesterday I wrote to Glastonbury Festival urging them to remove this music group from their lineup. The reason I did this is because they have allegedly called for the murder of Conservative colleagues in this House, and because we've seen the footage of them appearing to show support for Hezbollah and Hamas, including the waving of a flag of the proscribed organisation. Words as others have said, have tragic consequences. And beloved colleagues Joe Cox and Sir David Amos were tragically murdered, and the 16th of June 2016 remains one of the worst days of my life, and I know many colleagues in this House feel the same. And we all have a duty to prevent this from ever happening again. I welcome the comments the Minister has made around Glastonbury. May I also ask if he agrees with me that whilst there is a police investigation, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube and others should strongly consider taking their music off their platform until that investigation is over? And may I also note the absence of the member for Islington North, who is not present and not involved in this discussion, and will he join me in condemning his appearance in a photograph with that group, and will he join me in calling for him to apologise for appearing in a photo with that group?
Can I just remind members that if they're going to make specific reference to colleagues, they ought to have given them notice in advance. Minister.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let me agree with his remarks about words having consequences. He's absolutely right about that, and he's absolutely right that we all have a duty in this House to do everything that we possibly can to conduct our politics in a responsible and reasonable way, as do others. He mentioned Glastonbury, and I'm grateful to him for the care and attention that he has taken in terms of writing to the organisers of the festival. He heard the comments that I made earlier on, and I heard the remarks he made with regard to streaming platforms, and my sense was there was a lot of agreement from members right across the House with the remarks that he was making. With respect to him, I'm not aware of the other matter, and I'm keen not to annoy Madam Deputy Speaker, so I won't refer to the Right Honourable Gentleman who's not in his place on this occasion.
Sarah Dyke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Given the proximity of my constituency to the Glastonbury Festival, many local people are concerned that a pop group promoting harmful and extremist rhetoric are scheduled to perform there this summer. So what criteria does the Home Office apply when assessing whether artists or performers are promoting harmful or extremist rhetoric, particularly where there is a clear attempt to provoke public outrage? And will he work with me and my honourable friend, the member for Wells and Mendip Hills, to engage with the Glastonbury Festival organisers to find and work towards an appropriate resolution?
Madam Deputy Speaker, yes, I'm happy to do all of the things that she asked. She mentioned the funding. I hope that she heard the remarks that I made earlier, not least in terms of the government not thinking that individuals expressing such views should be receiving taxpayer funding. I don't think that is a controversial thing to say. And the Secretary of State for DCMS is reviewing the Music Export Growth Scheme. In terms of her point about the Glastonbury organisers of the festival, I suspect as a neighbouring MP, she will hopefully have a good and constructive relationship with them, and I hope very much that they have listened to what she has said today.
Josh Dean.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The comments made by this group are chilling, disgusting, and they risk dragging our politics and our country to a very dangerous place. Can I echo the comments of my honourable friend for North Durham? When I go to schools in my constituency, the message I take to young people is, you have a place in politics, you can represent your community, you can make a change. Does my honourable friend agree with me that incitement to violence and violence against MPs has that chilling effect, particularly on people from underrepresented groups in our country, pushing them not to get involved in politics, and it is deeply, deeply wrong?
Well, I think the Honourable Member makes a really important point, and I agree wholeheartedly with it. He's right about the chilling effect. The chilling effect, yes, absolutely would extend to young people, but it would extend to older people and others, anyone who's potentially considering stepping forward to serve in public life. The strength of our democracy, the strength of our country, depends upon people who are prepared to step forward and serve their constituents as members of this House. And we need to ensure that people feel that they can step forward to do that without being subjected to completely unnecessary harassment and intimidation. That is specifically why a key theme of the Defending Democracy Task Force is to look at incidences of harassment and intimidation, to look as to whether there are gaps in existing legislation, and where there are gaps, we will fill them.
John Glenn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Every time I come into this House, I stand underneath the plaque of Joe Cox and I look over and I see the plaque of David Amos, and it seems impossible that within 10 years, 2 of our colleagues could have been murdered in that way. But I'm very grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for Rayleigh and Wickford for raising this question today, because it gives us a moment to reflect. Now, when I read the words, "The only good Tory is a dead Tory," "kill your local MP," "up the Hamas, up Hezbollah," I cannot see what time interval needs to take place for that to be deemed an offence. And I recognise what the Minister says entirely about these processes need to happen independently. But speed of justice contributes to confidence in justice. And as a former arts minister who worked to support masses of creative industries, with very few of them probably supporting me or my party, I'm very clear-headed about the use of the Music Export Growth Scheme. But I do hope that the Honourable Gentleman, who I know to be a very decent man, that in his work on Defending Democracy Task Force, he will make sure, proactively, that all taxpayers' money does not go to any organisation, any creative group that produces language like that has such a negative effect on the way that politics is conducted and the way that we're seen in this place. Well done.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I agree with the Right Honourable Gentleman. He's right. This has provided us with a moment to reflect. The words that he repeated, and I completely understand why he chose to repeat them, are utterly vile. They make my blood boil. And I agree with the other points that he made. He as a former very senior minister himself, he will know about the importance of the operational independence of the police. But I think he made his point in a very reasonable way, and it will have been heard. Finally, with regard to the comments that he made about funding, I think he's absolutely right again, and that is why the Secretary of State, as a matter of urgency, will now be looking at these matters.
David Pinto-Dushinsky.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it's good to hear the House united in its condemnation of the appalling comments by this band, inciting hatred and supporting terrorism. And our thoughts and our prayers are all today with the families of Joe Cox and Sir David Amos. Does the Minister agree with me that there can never be any excuse for inciting violence against MPs or supporting the vile anti-Semitic terrorists of Hamas and Hezbollah, and that a threat to MPs is a threat to democracy itself?
Minister.
He's absolutely right. There can never be any excuse for these kind of words. This isn't about free speech. It's not about artistic licence. It is about incitement. And he's absolutely right to frame his question in the way that he has. And I give him an assurance of the seriousness with which we take these matters.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for his answers? Kneecap's so-called apology simply underlines their hatred and refusal to see that you simply cannot call for murder because you don't agree with political beliefs. We know that they glorify IRA terrorist campaign, and they make no apologies for that. No one can support a group who are prescribed. This must be dealt with, and I look to the Minister in particular, since the responsibility lies on his shoulders, to ask just how the Minister will send the appropriate message from this House that which we may not agree politically, that there is a line. Kneecap have crossed that line. There is right and wrong, and if there is someone who has done wrong, they are accountable in law for it. So no half-hearted, grudging, fake apology will suffice. They need to be taken to justice by the police, taken to court, and better still, put them in jail.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I agree with the Honourable Member. I think he framed the appropriate message very effectively himself. He's right. It is never acceptable to utter the kind of words that we've heard today, and this government takes these matters incredibly seriously. He will also have heard the agreement I made earlier on to meet with leaders of political parties in Northern Ireland. Of course, happy to meet with the political leaders of any party to discuss these matters, but I'm grateful to him for his contribution.
Dr. Andrew Murison.
Does the Minister agree with me that there is no context at all in which it would be acceptable to utter the remarks attributed to this particular group? Does he hope, as I do, that the criminal justice system pursues them with their utmost rigour, without any thought to mitigation, such as so-called artistic licence? And does he share my disappointment as a South West MP that Glastonbury still, as of this afternoon, is listing this outfit for performance on Saturday the 28th of June?
Minister.
Well, I certainly agree with him with regard to there being absolutely no excuse whatsoever for these remarks. I know that he will understand the limitations placed on me with regard to what is an ongoing live investigation by the police. But the words that he's used, I think, are entirely reasonable and appropriate. With regard to Glastonbury, I know that he will have heard the contributions made by other honourable members, and he will have heard the words that I used earlier with regard to the organisers of that particular festival, considering whether it is appropriate or not to have on their lineup a group who are currently subject to a live police investigation. I hope very much that they will take that seriously and they will listen to the concerns that have been expressed by members right across this House.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The phrase "kill your local MP" carries a sincerely sinister connotation right across this House. But to my party, Madam Deputy Speaker, who has lost councillors, who has lost members of the Northern Ireland Parliament, who has lost members of this House to Republican terrorists, these words are not clever, they're not smart, but they are an incitement to terrorist activity, which this band has glorified in the past and has a real danger through what it calls its art to actually glorify the actions that caused the murder and death of so many people in Northern Ireland. So can the Minister give that reassurance that they will use all in their power, not just to look at what has been said in the recent videos that come to light, but what this band has also said in the past? And as he looks to Glastonbury and given their organisers advice, will they also look to a forthcoming event in Belfast City Council and provide it the same advice?
I can give him that reassurance. The words that we have heard are chilling anywhere, in any corner of this United Kingdom. But I completely understand the point that he's made and the particular significance that they will have in his constituency and in his part of the world. So yes, I can give him the reassurances that he seeks.
And Swain.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Minister has a point about the name. An Irish Republican band with a name that must bring a shudder down the spine of so many in Northern Ireland, and which the gallant and Right Honourable Minister chooses not to use, ought to have raised alarm bells long before it got its hands on any public money. Is there any prospect of getting that money back?
Well, let me say that I agree with the sentiment expressed by the Right Honourable Gentleman. In terms of the money, that is something that the Secretary of State will be looking closely at.
Carla Lockhart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In Northern Ireland, the term kneecap is related to a violent criminal act. When you have a grouping who take this as their name, express a desire for MPs to be murdered, and support prescribed organisations such as Hezbollah and Hamas, you have to question why they've been awarded so much UK taxpayers' money. Yesterday, I took the opportunity to write to the US and Canadian authorities, asking them to refuse any visa applications from these hate mongers ahead of their publicised tour of North America, to prevent them spreading their violent message across the world. Will he join me in this lobby also?
Well, as she may be aware, not to the same extent of herself, but I am intimately familiar with the connotations of the name from my previous professional experience. So I completely understand why she's made the point in the way that she has. Let me undertake to go away and reflect more specifically on the points that she has made, but very happy to discuss them with her and with any of her colleagues further, should she wish to do so.
Lincoln Jock.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. If this band remains on the bill at Glastonbury this year, will the Minister undertake on behalf of the Government that no Government ministers will attend the whole festival?
Yes. Well, I can say to him that I wasn't intending to attend myself. Let me reflect on the question, not least because I am not responsible for other ministers' diaries. However, as I have said previously, I am sure, I'm certainly hopeful, that the organisers of Glastonbury will be listening to the contributions that have been made and will reflect on the decision that they had previously taken.
Dr Al Pinkerton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for the tone and manner in which he's answered questions today. I'm also cognisant of the ongoing legal action that may be pursued in this particular case. So, generalising the point just a little bit, can I ask the Minister how the Government is ensuring that public funding mechanisms such as the Music Export Growth Scheme are not inadvertently supporting entities that propagate extremist rhetoric and incitements to violence? And this isn't just about the money, it's also about the official imprimatur that schemes like that offer to the entities involved.
Thank you. The Honourable Member makes an entirely reasonable and legitimate point about the public funding. I can say to him again, the Secretary of State is reviewing the scheme, and I'm sure that she will have more to say about it in the not too distant future.
Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister has responded to the urgent question and has given unequivocal condemnation, which I'm sure is shared across this House. Does he understand, though, that there are many of us that have suffered threats down through the years? Fortunately, we have the signs in the chamber about those who have suffered and paid the ultimate sacrifice. Would you agree with me that while the comments here are absolutely universally across the chamber, they won't amount to diddly squat to the group concerned, but the actions that follow the Minister's words will or could matter? Will he undertake to come back to the House after he has undertaken the actions that he has undertaken to do, to update the House and members and the general public about what those actions are?
Well, I'm very grateful for him for the points that he's made, and I completely understand the points which I thought he made in a very fair, reasonable way. I will give him that commitment to come back and update the House. I can give him my personal assurance of the importance that I attach to these matters. I chair the Defending Democracy Task Force. I've personally invested a huge amount of time and effort working very closely with officials, not just in the Home Office, but with officials right across government. It is an important mechanism that brings together the collective resource of the UK government, and it is on me to ensure that those resources are properly marshalled in the right place at the right time, so that we can be ambitious about ensuring that people don't get subject to the kind of completely unacceptable harassment and intimidation. So I give him that assurance that I will do everything I possibly can working with colleagues across government, and I'll be very happy to speak to him and to come back and update this House accordingly.
It's Savile Roberts.
An apology to the families of David Amos and Joe Cox was the only slim chance for redemption. The use of inciting language when it becomes apparent is to be condemned, just as violence against elected representatives is always to be condemned. Politics is about being alert to the right to use words powerfully and the risks and responsibilities of doing so. Does the Minister agree, therefore, that it is both right and necessary to condemn incendiary language and also to ensure freedom of speech right across the political spectrum?
Well, I'm grateful to her. Yes, I do agree with that. And let me say to her that I was in Wales recently where I discussed these matters with the First Minister. And as I mentioned earlier on, it's very much the government's intention that our approach and our response isn't just conducted at the UK government national level, but is wired through local authorities and through the devolved assemblies. I'm acutely conscious of the fact that there will be elections taking place in Wales next year, and I want to make sure that everybody who participates in those elections can do so in a safe and secure way. And I want to work with the First Minister and with her and all of her colleagues in Wales to ensure that that is the case.
Alex Easton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I join in the condemnation in this House from right across the spectrum and the Minister about the comments from this group which are abhorrent, evil and twisted? Would the Minister agree with me that any local government authority, and I think especially of Belfast City Council, who are allowing groups such as these to use their property for concerts, that they would rethink that policy? And would he give a further commitment that he will contact Belfast City Council to ensure that this group are not allowed to use council property for spewing out sectarian hate and evil comments?
Well, I'm grateful to him for the point that he's raised. All public bodies have an absolute responsibility to ensure that taxpayers' money is being spent in an appropriate way. I'll reflect on the comments that he's made, take them away and look at them, and I'm happy to correspond with him further about them.
Joshua Reynolds.
Madam Deputy Speaker, is the Minister confident that the existing framework which prevents public funds being used to platform individuals and groups who seek to stoke division are robust?
Well, as the Honourable Member will understand, I know, these are public funds that have not been allocated via my department. So I will look very carefully at the points that he's made. As I referenced earlier, the Secretary of State for DCMS is looking very carefully and reviewing this scheme. But as I've just said to the Honourable Gentleman, I think all public bodies and certainly all government departments have an absolute responsibility to ensure that the taxpayers' money is spent wisely, and that is the approach that this government will take.
Jim Allister.
With the scale of imprisonment that we've seen in recent months for those who make inappropriate comments on social media, does the Minister agree that confidence in policing and the prosecution services is on the line here in terms of this appalling incitement to murder, and that confidence requires action against this group, a group which has made their hateful career out of advocating terrorism and supporting terrorism, be it Hamas, Hezbollah or the IRA? And in that regard, would the Minister undertake to look at the adequacy of the offence of glorification of terrorism, because it has so many let-outs that a group like this is adept at exploiting, that really does need to be tightened up? Will he do that as a consequence of this episode?
Well, let me say to the Honourable Gentleman that the police and the Crown Prosecution Service have a very difficult job to do in general terms, and I'm determined not to make their job more difficult to do under these particular circumstances. In terms of his second point, I think he makes a reasonable point. Let me take that away and reflect on it, and I will come back to him.
Sammy Wilson.
Speaker, every time members enter this chamber, they walk through a door which has plaques in memory of Robert Bradford, Eri Neve and Ian Gow, who were murdered by the IRA simply because they served as MPs in this House. And this group, through their music, have glorified that kind of terrorism, just as Sinn Féin on a regular basis in Northern Ireland, right up to the level of First Minister, glorify terrorism on a regular basis. To that extent, they could be called the musical wing of Sinn Féin. Will the Minister give us an assurance that, first of all, he will encourage the police to investigate this quickly? Secondly, he will undertake to ensure that the formula for funding doesn't allow groups like this to get funding any more in the future. And thirdly, that he will seek to do his best to deny them any further platforms, because I suspect that their panicked apology is more about getting a lucrative tour in Canada and America and getting visas for it, rather than being sorry for what they did.
Well, let me say to him that incitement to violence is completely unacceptable. There's never an excuse for it, and he's absolutely right to raise the case of those former members of this House who have lost their lives serving their constituents and serving our country. And I again give a commitment to the determination that the government and myself have in terms of seeking to ensure that all of us in this place and all who serve in public life are able to do so in a safe and secure fashion. He spoke about the investigation and as I've said to the House previously, that is underway, but I take and understand the point he made about speed. He'll understand that I've responded specifically on the point around funding, and the Secretary of State will be looking at that, as will other government departments, I'm sure. He's right, in conclusion, to reference the fact that members of this House in good faith have served their constituents and have lost their lives doing so. That is utterly vile, and all of us have a responsibility to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And through the Defending Democracy Task Force, that is the body of work that I will ensure means that we are best placed to address the threats that we all know about.